Hello and welcome to spring 2020. And what's that I smell in the air? It smells like fresh, quality. That's right, quarantine content. Everybody's out here baking bread during this quarantine, but we are gonna make some pretzels. They're easy, delicious, vegan, don't require any machinery or anything fancy, and they taste so good. We're gonna do 3 different kinds of pretzels today. We've got salty, everything bagel, and cinnamon sugar. A little bit of something for everybody, or just all for yourself, whatever you'd like. It is quarantine time. You're welcome to be selfish while being selfless and staying home. Before we get started, you're gonna wanna make sure you have all the right equipment. So although we don't need a stand mixer, we still do need a couple of items that you wanna make sure that you have. First, we're gonna need a bowl, a pot that I like to use one that has a rather wide base so that I can boil more than one pretzel at a time. A pan that you're going to want to layer with parchment for this one, and either a proper baking rack or a cooling rack works just fine as well. Before we get started, I'm going to turn the oven on right away to 425, and if you have a convection oven, that's perfect. Do 425 convection, or if you don't have a convection, that's okay too. Just do 425 bake. So I'm going to turn that on so that the stovetop will help the dough proof. For this recipe that yields about 4 to 6 moderate sized pretzels, we're aiming for 6 today, you will need 3/4 cups of water, 2 tablespoons of sugar, a half tablespoon of active dry yeast, 2 tablespoons of oil or melted earth balance, 2 cups of flour, approximately, you may need more, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I know that seems like a lot of salt, but these are pretzels and they are salty babies. To start, we're gonna warm up our water in the microwave. You can do it on the stovetop if you want, whatever works for you. You know it's at a good temperature when you can put your baby finger into the water and it doesn't feel like anything. That's room temperature. You want the water at room temperature or ever so slightly warmer than that. So next we're going to put our room temperature water into the bowl, followed by our sugar, and then you're going to let that dissolve for a moment before adding our yeast. Give your yeast a stir and make sure it is well coated in the water, and we are going to let that bloom for a couple of minutes on the warm stove. So I am going to put a lid on top of mine and then just put it aside while the yeast begins to foam. While we are waiting for our yeast to bloom, now is a great time to get our toppings ready for our pretzels later. The first topping I'm going to use is just going to be a standard sea salt. Second topping we're going to use is going to be a cinnamon sugar mix. I have this coconut sugar and cinnamon mix that I've had for a long time that I'm going to use. When you're making it, you just want to make sure that you don't overdo it on the cinnamon. So it's a little bit of sugar and then just a sprinkle of cinnamon mixed together. You're going to want to put that cinnamon sugar into a wide, shallow bowl, or perhaps a plate that has higher edges on it for the flipping process so that it doesn't get everywhere. Finally, we're going to get ready some everything bagel mix, which is very simple. You need 2 tablespoons of poppy seed, 2 tablespoons of sesame seed, 1 tablespoon of minced dried garlic, 1 tablespoon of minced dried onion, and 2 teaspoons of sea salt. Why you want to use minced dried garlic and onion rather than a garlic powder and an onion powder? The powdered stuff becomes soggy and then also kind of burns in the oven, so you want to try to make sure that you're using the minced stuff. If you have to use the powder in the mix because you don't have any mince, that's okay, just use a lot less of it. I'd probably recommend maybe a half teaspoon instead of a full tablespoon. So by now your yeast should have started to bloom. Now because it's just in warm water and with sugar, and not that much sugar, not that much yeast, it is not going to look like super puffy and impressive, but there should still be blooming apparent. Now if it didn't bloom, your water might have been either too hot or too cold, and you may have to restart the process, but it's much easier to restart now than to wait until later and try to fix the dough then, because it's just not going to happen. Every yeasted recipe I do pretty much the exact same. I add my room temperature or warmer liquid, either water or milk, followed by the sugar and the yeast. Let that bloom, and then once that's bloomed, you add your fats. Now in this case it's going to be melted butter. Then you add a little bit of flour followed by your salt, so that the salt does not touch the yeast, because salt does kill the yeast a little bit. And then mix it in and then continue to add flour until you get to the perfect consistency. So now we're going to follow that process, and we are going to start with our melted earth balance or another oil, a little bit of our flour, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And then we begin to mix. So that mixes in, and then we continue to add flour. I like to add it more gradually because honestly, it may be 2 cups of flour today, it might be 3 cups of flour tomorrow. Yeast is alive and it chooses what it wants, and you gotta do what the yeast wants. Could be the moisture in the air or the way the stars align, but it is never gonna be the same amount of flour each time you do a yeasted dough. So now you'll see that this is starting to make a dough shape and dough texture. However, it is not quite where we want it to be. So I'm going to put my apron on for the next part, and we're gonna get our hands dirty. This apron is like full of caviar. It's a good thing I'm the only person eating these. A little bit there. All right. Okay, so let's make some space, and we are going to roll out this dough. Okay, and now it's time to get our hands dirty. We are going to dump out our dough, and this is the part where we would normally be very grateful to have a stand mixer, but that's okay. No need to spend the money, you can do this. All right, so we're gonna add a bit more flour to our dough, and then we're going to start, what you wanna kinda do is get that nice wet interior. That's what we want to flour up. So this is just a small amount of dough, which is great. Perfect for beginners to practice this. You get a grab action and push it in and pull. Roll it around in the flour. Now I'm doing this nice and slow for you guys to see. Roll it around the flour and then keep it going. It's a very repetitive motion. You can get both hands going in there. Now pretzel dough is super nice because it is a nice stretchy dough. It's a very forgiving dough. And you want to keep going until you stop feeling these sticky bits. Okay? Now that might not necessarily mean you have to add more flour. It might mean you just have to keep kneading. So it all should start coming together. Now I might need to add some more flour here. So all in all, you're going to want to make sure that you have on hand about 4 cups of flour just in case your dough decides that it wants to be moist today. This would also be a very similar dough to pizza, very similar process with just the water and the yeast rather than a milk. Alright, so it's starting to pull away. Okay, that's good, but I just want a little bit more. And now this is a palm action, so you want to make sure that you're using your shoulder and your palm to get in there. Good workout. Right, this is starting to feel right. You can just do this with one hand, but I prefer going down and then pulling out in to set up the next push. All right, so now it's pulling away, it's not sticking to me anymore. That's awesome. I'm going to continue to knead it just a little bit more, but I'm not going to add any more flour. So now we're going to take a pinch of it, okay? And you should be able to come to see through it. This is called the window test without it pulling away. I can hold it up to the light, I can see through it, and it's not pulling apart. Now it is just starting, so I probably shouldn't knead it anymore. This is a perfect little ball of dough. Make it nice and round. Beautiful, I love it. Hello, my little dough boy. Congratulations, it's a boy. You've brought a new baby into this world. Oh my God, hello, little dough boy. We are going to put him in a bowl with a lid on and allow that to proof on the warm stovetop. So we're going to move on to the next process once this guy has doubled in size inside the bowl. And we're back. Hello again. The next thing we are going to do before we move on to actually creating the pretzels is going to be getting our hot water ready. So we are going to add 8 cups of water to the pot with 1/8 of a cup of baking soda to the water. So we're gonna pop the dough out onto a clean surface. You do not want your surface to be floured. You actually want the dough to be able to stick to the surface when you're rolling it out. So a clean surface, but not a floured surface. And then we're gonna eyeball this, unless you have a scale, which would be really awesome, and cut the dough into 6 even pieces. Once I've manhandled my dough, I like to roll it back into a nice little ball to make sure that all of these are going to be easy to work with. And then you kind of get that top crusty layer more in the middle, and then you're going to be working with the nice more wet layer when rolling this out. Starting with a single ball of dough, we are going to squish the dough and make sure that we remove any air bubbles from it. And then we are going to take our hands into the middle of the dough and kind of gently roll our way out. So kind of like playing with Play-Doh when you were little. When you're making like a snake, you want to roll it out and then work with any parts that are slightly thicker. If you need to thin those out, you just want to make sure that you're not pulling at the dough. So if any parts end up too thin beside a thick part, try to work that part nice and gently. So you want to make sure that the dough is going to be relatively even through the whole thing and at a thickness so that when you fold it up into our pretzel shape, that is actually going to leave a little bit of space in the ears of the pretzel, if you will, and that everything is going to be able to cook evenly. So when you're rolling it through, you want to make sure that you're getting out those air bubbles right at the end of the pretzel. Once it's at a desired length, you're going to take the pretzel ends, move them to the middle, do a single twist, and then those little bits at the end, you're going to pinch at the bottom, and then you will have a nice heart-shaped little pretzel. Do that with all 6 of your pretzels, and then on your wired rack, you are going to actually grease it a little bit because you really don't want the pretzels to stick to the wired rack or the toppings of the pretzels, such as the cinnamon sugar. So you're going to grease the wired rack and then place all the pretzels on there. One tip, if you are having a hard time rolling out your dough, you're going to want to actually just wet your hands, because it's likely that your dough might be just a little bit too dry, and that's okay. Get your hands a little bit damp, and then you'll be able to manipulate the dough a little bit better. I think the beauty of yeasted doughs is that all your little doughboys are gonna come out just a little bit different. They have their own unique personality, and that is totally okay because they will all taste absolutely delicious. So the next part of the process is a bit time sensitive, so you wanna make sure that you don't have any distractions going on around you at this time. Once your pretzels have proofed for a couple minutes longer, you'll feel that they've started to accumulate this little bit of a crust on the outsides, not too much, but just a little bit. You are going to move to boiling them. Now all the pretzels get boiled for 30 seconds each and then immediately topped with the topping of your choice. I like to have all my toppings ready and a timer ready to go so that this process goes as smoothly as possible. I have this spoon that has little holes in it, and that's what I'm going to use to fish my pretzels out. If you have something called a spider or a large sifter, you can also use that too. So for the salted pretzels, I just sprinkle the sea salt right on top. I like to go around the outside and then down the middle, and then maybe do it a second time if I feel like I didn't get quite enough salt on. The same thing goes for the everything bagel mix. Go around all of the outside and then through the middle, and again, do a second coat if you feel like you need to. And for the cinnamon sugar, I like to have the bowl because I like to just throw the pretzel right into the bowl so that you're getting like really good coverage on it. If you don't want to just like burn your fingers on a pretty hot pretzel, or a child is doing this, I highly recommend just sprinkling the cinnamon sugar on. The full coverage is really just a preference thing. So now our pretzels are ready to go into the oven at 425 convection. Now because of the size of these pretzels, I'm going to do 4 minutes on each side. So you want to do 4 minutes, flip, and then 4 minutes. I'm going to check these after 3 minutes because I'm just a little concerned about their size. And the 4 minutes in there. They should be, before the first flip, a little bit golden brown on one side and then just lightly baked on the other. And then when they come out, they should be a nice, like deeper golden brown. And finally, after you flip them once and you take them out, they should be these big, puffy, beautiful, gorgeous dough babies, full form. Oh my God. Now, there probably will be a little bit of smoke from the cinnamon sugar. I want to unstick them from the pan as soon as possible after they come out of the oven. So use an oven mitt and a spatula and you'll get the least amount of sticking. If you had a spray oil to put on the rack, that would have been best, of course, but I did a very backdoor way of just putting shortening on there, so didn't exactly work perfectly, but it did enough of the job. My God, these are gorgeous. And now, of course, the final step is to enjoy our beautiful dough babies. I have here a little bit of local vegan dill cheese and some fresh tomatoes to have with my everything bagel pretzel. And opening them up, oh, I am so excited. Here we go. Here we go. Oh my God. Look at that. Beautiful, fluffy, warm, soft pretzels for you to enjoy. Hell yeah. Give this bad boy a try. A little bit of cheese. This stuff is so good, I could just cry. Oh my God. I can't believe I have nobody to share these with. All to myself. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoy your pretzels. I find the process a lot of fun, but the outcome is just like fantastic. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever. If you try these out, tag me on Instagram at Here for Cats and Food, and we will see you next time. Bye.